Good morning. Our hand today is going to be pocket fives. In this hand, I'm the big blind. It folds around to the cutoff. We open raises, and then it folds to me. Cutoff's playing 19-3. We can look at some of the auto notes. Plays turn draw aggressively. In the cutoff, he's playing 19%, 3 out of 16. His raise for sin stats 1 out of 4. It's good to see he doesn't usually limp, so he probably doesn't really have a limping range. He did limps once in the mid position. Don't know what that's about, but the key here is that we have 147 hands on him, so it's going to be somewhat difficult to really assign a solid range. I think this is probably a decent range. It's 19%, kind of matches what he would play. I think he has, raising range. I think a lot of these hands are going to be calling in his calling range as well. We could possibly add ace 10 off. As his raising range, that raise it up to 19.8, and maybe we should add some of these weaker ones down here too. Get it up to 21. Let's work with this. All right, folds to me. I have a 3-bet range versus cutoff that looks something like this. Definitely playing a lot of hands that are pretty strong, because I kind of estimate that if I raise with these, I should and I get called, I should probably be ahead. Also, we wanted to try to play some cards that have blockers in them. That's why we raise so much with aces, and we're also kind of protecting against a steal. Our calling range includes these low pairs, and the only issue I have with calling out of the blinds is that I find it difficult to play post flop. We're out of position, not really sure when I should raise, when I should lead, and all this stuff. I've known, or I've observed, that a lot of people that lead into the pre-flop aggressor tend to be fairly weak. Maybe a top pair with a weak kicker hand, or maybe a second pair type hand. They rarely have, trips or 2 pair. That's not to say that no one will do that. I think there are situations where it's called for. So, for example, let's say we had a raise, and then let's say 2 callers, and then I'm in the blind and I call, and I flop trips. That might be a situation where against 3 other opponents, it might be good to go ahead and lead with the hope that one of them thinks that we're weak and raises us. But I think here we're just going to call, see what develops on the flop. We know he has kind of a tight range, so we're going to hope for kind of unconnected boards, or a little bit of unconnected boards, and see if we can get lucky with the flop, or if we can take the pot down at some point later in the hand. Flop comes Jack, Jack 10. That's actually pretty good, because there's 2 jacks on the board, which makes it less likely that he has one, but at the same time, it makes it less likely that I have one. So at this point, I kind of feel like I'm way ahead or way behind. I don't think I'm just barely ahead. He either has a pair or he doesn't, or a pair plus or he doesn't. So I think we're going to check 100% of our range. And Villain fires out a half pot c-bet. So what is he going to c-bet with? I do think this is a pretty good board for him to semi-bluff. So I think he's doing it with his flush draws. Let's see here. Let's color code this. Flush draws, open enders, gut shots, probably his overcards. Maybe not all of them. Maybe just the 2-card backdoor flush draw overcards. And then I think he's probably betting for value, with the 10. Value / protection. I think with like 10-9, 10-8, he doesn't want to see a queen king race come out. I'm not sure if he's betting with 2s through 9s. I think that's going to be tough for him to bet, so I'm not going to include it. I'm just going to say middle pair plus and these draws, and you can see the draws now are making up over 50% of his hands. What do we do? One, do we think we have a raising range? I don't think so. I think the raising range is just going to turn our 5s into a bluff. Yes, we've got 2 outs if we're behind, but I think we do have some equity, because if we get a low card on the turn, which is more than likely going to happen, and we check and he checks behind, then all we have to do is fade one more river card, and if it's low, then there's a good chance that we do have this hand locked up. So I think in terms of calling, well, let's talk about raising. I think this is going to be a good spot to raise. I don't, let's see here. Three of a kind. I don't think we're raising middle pairs. And it's going to be hard to raise full houses unless he puts us on like a spade draw maybe. So our nut flush draw gets us to there. Our second nut draw gets us to there. Queen 9's the open ender. Queen 8's a gut shot. 9-8. Straight flush. 9-7 gut shot. 7-8 gut shot. Maybe that's what we're raising here. And then that leaves some other stuff for calls. I guess the only question I have with this is it believable? Is this board believable? Or is it just so unlikely? Like if we check raise, we're never going to get value from full house of three of a kind. I mean, what are we targeting here? Because if we check raise, I think maybe these overpairs can call. Other jacks can call, but I think if we've got the three of a kind, it's almost not like a value bet at that point. Because if he calls with a jack, we're probably beat. You could see our hands. We've got king jack and queen jack, but villain has the ace jacks, king jacks, and queen jacks. So maybe we actually don't really have a check raising range on here, just because the way the board is, and possible outcomes, you know, and our targeting, what we're targeting. I think the only thing we're targeting are those overpairs, and I just don't think he has a huge number of overpairs. I think even if we check raise, I think spades maybe, I guess the flush draw maybe. 11%. Open ender. Yeah, okay, I'm gonna go with that. I'm gonna say full house, three of a kind, and then those flushes. All right, so that leaves us then with a middle pair. I think we're calling. I think we're calling with the rest of these flush draws. 9-7. I think we had 8-6. We're calling those. Not all of our gut shots. I mean, we are, but some of them we're in like our check raising range. So we'll have to pay attention to that. And I think we can get away with like a 2-card backdoor flush draw calling for equity improvement. We're not just calling with air. We're calling with some weaker hands, but we've got hands that could definitely improve. And then I think I'm going to say pocket pair below the board. Is probably what we're calling. So we're heavy in some pairs, some one pair hands, and then these. And I think that's what we're going to target here. All right, so I did call. Turn was the 8 of spades, and I think that's a reason why if we check raise with, let's say, Jack 10, and he calls with the spade, I think we could probably bet, and there's a good chance that he's going to raise us. And our pot size would definitely be larger. So he bets 3, we raise to, let's say, 10, he calls. So then we're dealing with 26 in the pot. 26 in the pot, he has about 60. So I bet, you know, maybe 18 or 20, and he can shove, and we can call with full house because he thinks he has the spade. I think that is our target, to see those overpairs and then the spade draw. So it's probably best if we don't have any spades in our hand when we do this. All right, 5s, hit the 8. I'm just gonna check. I think he has a lot of spades. I think at this point you can kind of see, based on our ranges, he's gonna have the advantage. I think this is probably just gonna be a check fold, especially since we don't have a 5. So we're checking, and then he checks behind, and I think that's kind of interesting. So I don't expect the full house to fold or to check. I don't think a flush is going to check. I think a straight might check, three of a kind over pair. I think all of these might check. I don't think the nut flush draw is going to check either. So we want to get rid of the nut flush draw, but I think a second or third might be checking for fear that I already have like the nut flush. So I'm going to say 76, which gives us our range, which improves our range. It actually makes his range a little bit weaker. River's the ace of clubs, and that's probably a pretty bad card for us. We're hoping to fade, any over card here. I think a 7 would have been okay. I think an 8 would have kind of been bad because it counterfeits us. Same thing with a 10. I think a 9 would have been bad. So like 7 or lower. Now, ace comes out. I think if we want to take down the pot, we're gonna have to bet. We're gonna have to bet, maybe 10 big blinds and hope to get called. Maybe 8 big blinds and hope to fold them out. So what kind of hands are we gonna do this with? I think flush, full house flush. I think a straight could go for a little bit of value here. I think top pair has some value. I think we bet the ace. It's possible that he's going to call. But our ace has some weak kickers, so I think it's probably, if we had like ace king, ace queen, we could bet because we'd expect a weaker ace to call. But I think here, if we get called by an ace, we're beat. Our kicker's bad. All right, so we've got 3 of a kind plus or straight plus that we're betting for value. And then I think we're looking at what kind of hands can we get to fold. Any king queen. I don't really think we've got a whole lot of bluffs. I think at this point it probably makes a little bit more sense just to do the nothing hands. These 13% of nothings, and not even that. I think kings give us equity. I think I'm just looking at something like that. Maybe queen 7 where we block. King 9. Yeah, where we block straights and stuff, so he can't have it. We're just going to be betting those, hoping that he folds, and I think that's just going to be our balance. I think these weak pairs, we've got some showdown value with him. We check. If he checks behind, we might win with our pair. So, yeah, I think a check's going to be fine. I did bet 8.4. Based on the bet, what do I think he's going to call with? It depends on how he sees us. So I think full house would be raising. I guess I should say we don't have all of these. Yeah, we don't have all of those hands because remember we had the gut shot. There's 4 gut shots, and we would have been raising with some of them. So, in any case, we bet. What kind of hands is he going to call? I think he's probably going to call top pair plus. So we're expecting to get called at least 2/3 of the time. We need him to fold 1/3 of the time. How's my bet sizing? Let's check it out. All right. Here's calculator. We bet 8.44. That's our risk. Our reward is 8.44 plus the 12.8 that's in the pot. So I need this to work 39% of the time. I think we're getting called 67% of the time. So I don't think he's folding 40%. And that's what we need. So I think this is probably a losing bet. This was a bad bet on my part. What if I did smaller? Let's do half pot. Half pocket is going to get us close. So if we did 6.4 plus 12.8, 33%. Half pot is kind of right at the break-even point. EV equals 0 if he's calling with top pair plus. Obviously, if he calls with any pair, then it changes it. Then it makes it such that we end up betting more for value, including our top pairs, and less of our nothings. So I bet he calls. I think we're looking at a pair here. He shows ace king, which is what he had, top pair. So I think we work through the hand. We kind of put him on kind of what we expect. And I think this is why we should just check our ace weak kicker, because I do think he's got these ace big kickers that he would have fired a c-bet with and then slowed down on the turn when he didn't connect. That's pretty typical, and that's why I said I think an ace or a king is actually kind of a bad thing for us. We needed a lower card. So how did I think about, what do I think of this hand? I think pre-flop was fine. I think flop play was good. We didn't, I think a check call is appropriate. We had a plan that, if it gets checked around on the turn, we could take a stab at it, try to turn our fives into a bluff and pick it up, depending on what's out there. Maybe we could have fired the turn and really applied pressure, really kind of represented that we had the spade. But when we do that, this guy's going to think, why am I betting the nut flush? Why not just check and let him bet for me? Because the nut flush is going to fold out any of the open-ended straight draws and so forth that might continue. So I think it's an interesting dynamic. I think it's interesting to consider leading the turn. And then when we didn't, it checked through. Then typically we would lead the river, but I think the river was a really bad card. I think I made the mistake by leading with this hand. And as I said, I think we have our hands that we do lead, we do bet, because I think we're going to get called by worse. And then we have in a smattering of bluffs here, just to really, because I think he's going to fold some hands that are actually better than us. So if we think about, some of his hands, maybe kings or queens can fold. Maybe some of these weak pair, the tens could fold. So, we try to take advantage of that. All right, hopefully you enjoy this hand. If you do, look tomorrow for another.